What if the biggest shock in the story isn't the reunion itself, but the silence of the one everyone expected to fight back? The entertainment world froze the moment whispers of a DyShen reunion began to spread. Not because of what was seen, but because of what was imagined. A glance shared, a presence felt, a quiet moment that suddenly became the loudest story in the industry. And somewhere in the background of this growing storm, one name rose like a ghost through the commentary. Bai Lu. Right now, right before the next revelation, is your chance to stay connected. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss another powerful story, another shocking twist, or another unforgettable journey. But here's the truth that makes the story far more powerful than any rumor could ever make it. No dramatic statement was released. No public sadness was performed. No heartbreak was put on display. Just silence. And sometimes, silence speaks louder than denial. The so-called DyShen reunion did not arrive with flashing lights. It came like a hush through a crowded room. Two familiar presences crossing paths again. Two energies aligning in the most understated way. There were no confessions. No hand-holding moments. No cinematic declarations. And yet the industry trembled. Because people felt it. Not saw it. Felt it. The kind of atmosphere that makes rooms change temperature. The kind of presence that feels unfinished, no matter what reality actually holds. When Dylan and Shinyu exist in the same space, something in the audience shifts. Not because of romance, but because of history, of connection, of memory. And that connection has always been more powerful than facts. So where does Bai Lu stand in this imagined aftermath? Nowhere. And everywhere. Not because she is broken. Not because she is defeated. But because for the first time, she is no longer being pulled into a story that was never hers to begin with. The public expected reaction. Tears. Subtle sadness. Cryptic posts. But none came. And that absence became the loudest answer of all. If she were truly shattered, the silence would have cracked. If she were truly devastated, something would have slipped through the cracks. But what the world received was not collapse. It was dignity. It was distance. It was control. The industry wanted a triangle. But there was never a triangle. There were only three people trapped inside one exaggerated imagination. The reunion itself was more symbolic than literal. It wasn't about restarting something. It wasn't about reclaiming a story. It was about two people no longer being afraid to exist in the same space without running from the noise. And that is what shook the industry. Because for the first time, they weren't hiding. They weren't proving anything. They weren't denying anything. They were simply being. And when people stop performing, the performance collapses. Speculation rushed in to fill the silence. Comment sections turned into echo chambers. Reaction videos multiplied. Headlines grew sharper. Clicks grew faster. But at the center of all of it, there were no actors. No rehearsals. No forced drama. Just three people living while the world tried to script them. The assumption of Bai Lu's sadness was never based on evidence. It was based on expectation. People wanted her hurt because pain makes for better stories. But strength makes for quieter ones. And she chose quiet. Meanwhile, Dylan and Shinyu didn't arrive to reclaim a narrative. They simply stopped avoiding it. That was the real shock. They no longer reacted. They no longer clarified. They no longer performed. They existed, side by side. And in that quiet existence, the imaginary triangle finally collapsed. No one lost. No one won. There was no war. Only the slow, public realization that the story had always been larger than reality. And now, stripped of fantasy, what remains is something far more compelling than scandal. Humanity. Three individuals who were never enemies, never rivals, never villains in each other's stories. Just people trying to breathe under the weight of projection. And as the industry rushes to label what it cannot understand, one truth quietly rises to the surface. The strongest people are not the ones who react. They are the ones who remain standing when everyone else expects them to fall. So now, the question is no longer whether Bai Lu is sad. The real question is this. Was the industry ever brave enough to allow her to be anything other than the role they wrote for her? And when the dust begins to settle, the story does not end. It mutates. It becomes quieter, sharper, more dangerous to fantasy. Because now, the industry isn't just watching Dylan and Shinyu. It's watching Bai Lu breathe. The cameras don't point at her directly, but they hover, waiting. Waiting for a crack. Waiting for a moment of weakness. Waiting for something they can twist into a headline. And yet, nothing breaks. She continues forward without spectacle, without melodrama, without giving the world the satisfaction of a visible wound. And that is what unsettles people the most. Strong women are disruptive to weak stories. There is a narrative the industry loves to sell: the fallen rival, the silent heartbreak, the woman left behind. But Bai Lu doesn't fit into that script. She never did. She doesn't perform sadness for entertainment. She doesn't weaponize pain. She doesn't collapse for applause. And so the world is forced to sit with something it hates: unpredictability. At the same time, Dylan and Shinyu's quiet reunion energy continues to ripple through conversations, not because they are proving something, but because they are refusing to explain anything. They do not step forward to label what they are. They do not wrap their existence inside a press release. They do not reassure or provoke. They simply exist. And when two people stop running from rumors, rumors die slowly. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Slowly. The industry tremor doesn't come from what is happening. It comes from what is not. There are no dramatic breakdowns. No public jealousy. No emotional retaliation. No revenge styling. No cryptic lyrics. No exposed messages. Nothing the public can feast on. Just silence. And silence in this world is radical. The DyShen Reunion label is not built on proof. It's built on feeling. A shift in energy people swear they can sense through screens. A comfort in proximity. A familiarity they recognize without being able to explain. But what they are really responding to is something deeper than romance. They are responding to safety. There is a safety in how Dylan and Shinyu exist near each other. A comfort. A groundedness. And people mistake that kind of emotional stability for unresolved romance because they are not used to seeing calm that isn't performative. But calm doesn't need to be named. And stability doesn't need to be labeled. Meanwhile, Bai Lu stands outside the triangle that never existed, proving with every step that she was never an extra in anyone's story. She is the lead in her own. And the more she refuses to be pulled into reactions, the more powerful she becomes. This continuation of the story is not being written by headlines. It's being written by absence. By what isn't said. By what isn't shown. By what isn't given. And that makes it infinitely more real. So, what does the industry do when there is no villain? When there is no heartbreak to exploit? When there is no public meltdown? It panics. Because peace doesn't sell. But something interesting is happening. People are starting to see through it. They are starting to notice how often they are fed drama that doesn't exist. How often they are invited to believe in triangles that were never drawn. How often they project emotion onto people who never offered it. This story didn't shake the industry because of a reunion. It shook the industry because of restraint, because of maturity, because of three people who refused to play the roles the world begged them to play. And perhaps the scariest truth of all is not that Bai Lu is sad. It's that she isn't. And that refuses the industry of the one thing it craves most: a collapse. But there is none. Only calm. Only distance. Only quiet strength. And that is a revolution no headline knows how to control.